The 90s college comedy, one of my personal favorite genres, and what a ride that was. While most of these flicks kept to the vibe of, the slacker, underdog, blah, 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 none of these movies, none of them reached the heights of their benefactor, Animal House. Although I don't get it. I think films like PCU are far superior to Animal House. Seriously, but that's a video for another day. And while we did get a few good ones, there was a flood of just underwhelming college flicks that really... But none of that really stopped the flood of these flicks either way, in the 90s especially, and into the 2000s with shocking results. But it's always fun to see how these genres came to popularity and where they went, as the college flick never really went away and really took on its own form later down the line, and ironically took on a more serious tone as time went on. I mean, with films like Good Will Hunting and A Beautiful Mind taking home Oscars and whatnot, it's safe to say the genre had reached its pinnacle. Interesting thing is, though, if Animal House bred films like PCU or Glory Days, I think it's safe to say that films like Good Will Hunting were bred from early 90s movies like With Honors, School Ties, or even today's film, Threesome.
You could call my junior year in college an experiment in living.
Sure. 1, 2, 3.
Having one roommate was okay, but having two roommates was totally unexpected.
Now, I know that these films kind of came out just a few years prior to Good Will Hunting, but things went fast in the 90s, and they went even faster when you're trying to bone Stephen Baldwin. And the college flick is a genre that earned its stripes in the decade, that's for sure. And in my opinion, Threesome is among the best, well-crafted films of said genre, and is wrongfully accused as a lesser or even bad film. Everything from the critical reception to the box office was a complete disaster, and I literally hear nobody talk about this movie anymore. Why is that? I mean, I guess the main cast, they're not really big names, they weren't really huge or anything. But hey, everyone loves Josh Charles, right? He's still around doing his thing, and he's great in everything he's in. And, Stephen Baldwin, he has his fans, even though he's a certified psycho these days. And, I mean, what the fuck happened to Laura Flynn Boyle? I am here to make the case that Threesome is among, if not the best college film of the 90s. Hear me out.
Sex, it's like pizza. Even if it's bad, it's still pretty good.
Threesome tells the tale of Eddie, Stuart, and Alex, played here by Josh Charles, Stephen Baldwin, and Laura Flynn Boyle, who, upon securing dorm rooms at college, wind up living together due to a clerical error. And while, at first the female Alex is not happy with this, but after a while she eases into the situation, they all kind of do, as they all spend time together and, kind of become pretty close to each other, closer than they probably intended, and, college stuff happens that brings them all to question their sexuality and their friendships in this underrated 90s classic college flick. The film is an autobiographical tale from director Andrew Fleming, who claims to have gone through similar confusing, sexual and, well, I guess, just gay experimentation. That kind of makes sense, seeing as the director Andrew Fleming would also go on to direct the movie Dick. I mean, he did direct that movie, but he's more well known for his great work on the film The Craft. I bind you, staunch gang. I bind you from not liking and subscribing. And much like The Craft, Fleming takes what could have been a by-the-numbers film and turns it into something special. I don't know. The look and feel here in Threesome goes such a long way. Everything is shot so serious and to the point. We get these spanning kind of mind's eye shots when Josh Charles, who also narrates the film, whenever he makes a strong point or something, the camera tends to react just like him. Like whenever he's angry, the camera finds itself reacting angrily and whatnot. It's pretty damn cool, and it's an understated little thing in this movie. Things that go a long way to give the film some real personality, And the film's moments of levity, they also take on a solid role in the storytelling. I just love how all these pieces are just put right where they need to be. It's fascinating watching these movies now, much older, and realizing that these are just kids, basically. Something lost on me when watching the movie at a younger age. In particular, Stephen Baldwin, who in my opinion is on top of his game here. Such a shame. I was a big Stephen Baldwin fan back in the day, mainly due because, of course, Biodome, but he really had some talent and was getting some decent roles around this time with films like 8 Seconds and The Usual Suspects. Hell, I even think he is a spot-on, classic, fantastic Barney Rubble.
But I just had to come back here and tell you, I love you.
As for Josh Charles, well, he never really got his proper praise in the 90s, though he was well remembered by us all at that point as the clown dog dude from Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead. Check out my 30-year retrospective of that film next, featuring Keith Coogan. Josh Charles would also appear in the Dead Poets Society and other 90s classics like Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead, Crossworlds, and the underrated Cold-Blooded. Anybody remember that one? Let me know. And Josh Charles is still doing his thing today, constantly a presence in film and television since the mid-80s, where he got his start on a John Waters movie. And I always thought that he has a great screen presence, and here in Threesome, man, he really manages to give his character a third dimension, unlike anything we'd seen up to that point, at least, regarding the subject matter and whatnot.
I need a facial. I need to go on a diet. I need new shoes.
As for Laura Flynn Boyle, well, damn, she had one hell of a 90s career. Ironically, she had her scenes cut from Dead Poets Society, but would go on to appear in films like The Dark Backward, check out my video on that one too, and other movies like Where the Day Takes You, Wayne's World, Baby's Day Out, and The Road to Wellville, just to name a few. And she would shine in the 2000s as well, with roles in Men in Black 2 and one of my favorites, Happiness. And if I'm being honest here, though, with Threesome, she's fine in the movie and definitely has her own approach and whatnot, but I can't help but feel that she was a bit miscast. I don't know, maybe she played the role a little too odd, or I don't know, I guess it's kind of hard to see the genuineness in her character, if that's a way to put it. Is that a word? Really, I kind of feel like her character, Alex, is just kind of a placeholder for the plot and the events to kind of bounce off of, throughout the movie. She does have some great scenes and whatnot, but I can't help but feel like the film would have been better remembered with another actress. I don't know. What do you guys think?
You just look at my butt. He is what he is.
He doesn't know what he is. He's confused.
He's not confused about my butt.
Many scenes would famously be cut or shortened down, specifically kind of like the sex stuff between Eddie and Stewart, as they kind of have a rompus scene in the film. In the original cut, Alex moves out, and then they get to business. So, the film really kind of took a third act turn that upon seeing the film's ending now, it really would have changed up the whole dynamic. Threesome does take a pretty strong and brave stance on the issues, even with whatever backlash they got at that point and even nowadays. The film itself is pretty obvious, and the autobiographical nature is not lost.
I think Threesome is missing some of the very real pain of that situation. It doesn't snigger too much, just enough, however, to sugarcoat the material into palatable Hollywood fare. All throughout this picture, while I was watching it, I kept thinking how the same story would be handled in, say, a European film, where the pleasures and the pain would be so much more.
If I had to pick, any real issues besides Boyle's casting, I'd say some of the acting from the extras is a little off at times, to say the very least. And the montage count is a bit much, albeit, with a great soundtrack nonetheless. There's a really good soundtrack here. The intro to the entire film is actually a 90s Tears for Fears song featuring only one member. That's a crazy story. I'm thinking of covering that on the channel. And there's also like a really cool U2 cover on here. Great soundtrack. But, the film doesn't really feel too structured, or at least it doesn't feel like a straightforward 3-act ordeal. Rather, it kind of takes a free-form approach on the storytelling near the second act. It works, but it does feel a little slow here and there. I guess I can see why the film was poorly reviewed upon release, and you know, I can definitely see how it did great on video as well, as seeing the teen market at the time. You know, it was teenagers renting movies, and if teenagers see a movie called Threesome with fucking Stephen Baldwin on it, they're gonna check it out, right? I mean, I first saw this movie way too young as a kid because I had older siblings. I first saw this movie way too young when I was a kid because I had older siblings. But I don't know, something brings me back to this film every year, and I kind of deconstruct it more and more and more. I was trying to figure out, like, why do I always come back to this movie, aside from Stephen Baldwin's ass? Why do I always come back to this flick? And I think I figured it out. As all you guys know if you watch the channel, or maybe you don't know, I am a huge Alexis Arquette fan. I love her performance in this, albeit a brief one. But I would always go back to this flick over the years, and I'm pretty sure that's why. Alexis Arquette didn't do too many studio films, you know, so I just like seeing how she was just lit and how she played off these other actors and stuff. And I gotta say, Alexis Arquette's role in this is fantastic, albeit brief. Unfortunately, though, Threesome is basically forgotten. It's had a few releases over the year, most notably in 2011. That particular edition of the DVD features a really cool director's commentary. I highly recommend listening to that. And it doesn't seem, you know, any of the cast really cared for the movie. None of them, you know, especially Stephen Baldwin, who spoke publicly about distancing himself from the film when he became born again. And he wanted the world to know he is not gay. But hey, you're still going to hell, Stephen Baldwin. There's nothing you can do about it. I'd recommend Threesome to anybody who questions their sexuality when watching a Stephen Baldwin movie, as Threesome is one of the best 90s college coming-of-age sex dramedies ever made. And Stephen Baldwin, remember this: you're going to hell.
You know what I mean?